Hey everyone, thanks for watching this video on one-on-ones. My name is Fahey-Ahrndt. I'm a leadership expert and I connect young professionals to leadership tools and a collaborative community where they can learn from each other, grow, and improve their leadership skills with my help and mentorship. I love teaching about leadership. I'm a leadership expert having many years in healthcare leadership and volunteer leadership, and so I just want to give back to the community and share what I've learned. So as a manager, one of the things I do frequently is host one-on-ones, so I thought it was an important topic to cover. So we're going to dive right on in. Why do one-on-ones? There's a few different reasons. First of all, it's time for your staff or your direct report to get time and face time with you. Oftentimes as a leader, we know our leaders' schedules are very crowded and busy, and when you make time for your direct report, that makes them feel very important. It makes them feel like you care about them, and it just gives them time with you that they might not already have. I also found that it reduces the number of emails and crazy communications between you because, if something's important, they'll bring it to your one-on-one with them, and then you're not getting these extra emails in your inbox. You're actually communicating more effectively by doing it in person or virtually. I'll talk more about that. And so you're not getting like extra urgent emails in your inbox. I also think that it helps you feel informed as a leader to know exactly what your direct report's working on, to help eliminate barriers right away when they come up, and so then you can feel confident in what your team is doing and help other people grow and develop themselves. So now that you know the why and why it's important, let's talk about structure. So one of the reasons why I want to do this video is because when I first started as a leader, I was really intimidated about having one-on-ones. I felt like I had to do a perfect job at guiding the conversation. I felt like I wanted to have all the answers in meetings, and I realized none of that is true. The meeting isn't about you as the leader, it's about them as your direct report, the people who are meeting with you. And so the first 20 minutes should be about them. The last 10 minutes should be more for you. And so you need to let them talk first, listen more, talk less. Remember, this is their meeting, it's not yours. So I put times on here. It doesn't matter how long. I would suggest if you're starting out at anywhere from an hour to 30 minutes for your meeting. So this is a 30-minute or half an hour example. First 20 minutes are for them to tell you any updates they think are important, to share any ongoings, and to ask you for help or, catchballing ideas around. If there's time left, there often isn't. Your direct report might have a ton to share, and that's totally fine. But if there's time left, you can take those last 10 minutes or so. I kind of, 2/3, 1/3 of the meeting for you to talk and bring up any points that your direct report hasn't already mentioned. And you'll find normally once these meetings start going and the direct report gets used to the type of things you ask about, they're gonna start by sharing things you have on your mind, and you won't even have anything to ask because they know what you expect. So this is great. So they talk first, then you can bring up anything you want to. And then I have a cue here for quarterly. I used to think that, okay, I'm gonna try to fit in growth or learning and development for my direct report during every one-on-one, and then I realized there just isn't enough time. But it's important, and so I wanted to draw attention to it. So what ends up working well is if I make time for this on a quarterly basis. So about every 3 months, I make sure that when I'm preparing for the one-on-one ahead of time, I remember, okay, this is quarterly meeting, it's the, every 3 months, and so let's make just 10 or 5 minutes to talk about how the person's doing with their personal growth and development, and see if there's anything that you can help them with. So that's the structure. The cadence. So how often or how frequent should your one-on-ones be? It's really up to you. I think it depends on how well you know your team when you're first starting. I think it depends on how often you have face-to-face touch points outside of your one-on-ones. If you're meeting every single day together with other teams, you might not need a very frequent meeting. I find that when I was first starting out in my role and I was getting to know team members, even if I knew them from previous roles, but they still needed to get to know me in my new role, I still wanted to meet with them frequently. So it was a weekly meeting, and it started out an hour. I know that's a lot of time. I know you might be thinking, oh my gosh, Kayla, that's a lot of time. But I was willing to make that commitment and investment in my folks so that they can operate efficiently, effectively, know how to communicate with me, and I can set some expectations right up front. We've now moved to bi-weekly. I just feel like my calendar fills up with other important things that I know I need to do. I feel really informed about what my staff are doing, and they know how to reach out to me outside of the one-on-one, and so bi-weekly or every other week seems to work really well. Maybe this should be bi-monthly. It's fine. And so monthly, if you're thinking about an executive leader, or vice president maybe of your org, if you report to the VP, they might have less time on their calendar and they might be traveling around. Maybe it's a monthly touch point. It depends on how frequently you interact with that person. So you kind of gauge how that feels. Now that you know the structure and the cadence, let me give you some tips for the meat or the content of the meeting and how it should flow. So I love this question. It's what's on your mind? So this is kind of a coaching question that I've learned over time. I personally feel in my one-on-ones, the people that I work with, the people that work for me are humans, right? We're humans. So we have more going on than just whatever's going on at work. And so I like to open up with this question, what's on your mind? Because it allows them to tell me, you know, my kid is a toddler and he's running around. I'm so struggling with potty training, or I am struggling with sleep. That's what's on my mind right now. It could be work related. Oh, I just came from a meeting and here's kind of the issues, and so we can start talking through some of that. So I welcome my people to tell me about whatever it is they want, home, work, whatever. You can set your own boundary. I don't necessarily give home advice or things like that or pry too much, but if they want to share it with me, I'll listen, because they're whole people. They have lots going on. And also I think as a leader, we've got to be vulnerable to the point where they know that we too are humans. I have a child. I know what it's like to have a sleepless night and have to come to work, so I can empathize and relate and help and give tips that way if I'm comfortable. But otherwise, what's on your mind? And it's such an open-ended question that they'll just start talking. The other question that I ask is, okay, and what else? What else do you have for me? What else? I'll just keep asking what else until they don't have anything else. I promise you, they always have something else. And if you've ever been in a one-on-one with your boss and they ask you what else, in the back of your mind you're deciding, okay, do I want to keep talking or do I want to say, yep, that's it? We always have something to share. So I always try to create space and welcome by, more conversation by saying, and what else? Listen more, talk less. You guys can probably tell I'm an outgoing person. Talking is one of my favorite things, something I've had to work on, and I find a lot of folks do. I've had bosses who talk my whole one-on-one, so they take up the beginning and the end, and then I'm trying to fit in the things I need from them, the questions I'm trying to get from them in the last 2 minutes. Not fun, right? So listen more and talk less. With this, I also want to say, don't try to jump in as the leader and solve their problem. Ask really good questions back to the person, like, well, what else could you do? Well, what's your real issue here? What were you trying to get from them? What was your goal here? And get them into this reflective state where they're solving their own problems. You're not solving the problems for them. You're not talking or disguising advice in a question. When you say things like, have you tried this? You're actually making a suggestion. You're not helping them solve their own problem. So I really welcome what type of question. What's on your mind? What else do you have for me? What was the goal of this? What are you trying to get? And those are going to help the person be really reflective. If you guys have more questions about coaching questions and want to learn more, I have another video that you can find in the playlist called Working with Teams. And it's all about coaching questions and really good ways to ask more and listen more and talk less in one-on-ones. I love to take notes because, like my mom told me, it's not written down, it never happened. As leaders, we're meeting with so many people, we've told people different things, it's so hard to remember who we've talked to and what we've talked to them about. And so I take notes. And so my advice for you is to get a notebook. Here's a one subject notebook. I like to have one with multiple subjects and like a tab for each of my direct reports. And then during the one-on-one, I'll open it up to their section and I will date it and write everything that they tell me, just so I have an update. And I'll ask them and I'll say, hey, do you mind if I take notes? I just want to be able to capture all the action items we have to take away from today's meeting. And also I just have a hard time remembering, and they're totally cool with it. I use that notebook for when I'm doing performance reviews, and I'll go back and say someone's really struggling with something, but then they've improved. I'm able to see that progression in the notes, like, wow, this person improved throughout the year. I am so proud of them, and I have the documentation to support that, and I can actually give real examples during the performance review feedback. And that way it's not just generalizations, it's actual tangible examples. When the person gets their review and you talk to them about it, they're going to be so happy that, oh my gosh, they actually remembered those things I did throughout the year. And that shows that you care as a leader. So take notes. If you need to remember the things you want to ask your direct report about, one of my kind of tips is I like the post-it method. I take like a sticky note, a small one, and I write down just like 3 things that I might want to touch on. And as the person is talking to me during them time, I'll go and check the box if they've covered it. That way I know when it's my time or you time that I have the checked off post-it and I can see what they haven't yet covered and what I still need to ask about. If the project the person's working on is important to you, if it's something that has a deadline for you or your team, if it's an expectation that you've set out before, if it's important, ask. You've got to ask. So here's something I can share from personal experience. I had a direct report who was really struggling with juggling so many projects. And there was one thing that was a little less important than the other things. And so I decided I wasn't going to ask them about it during the one-on-one. So a few weeks went by and I didn't ask about it. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I know this thing needs to get done at some point, and I'm feeling a little uncomfortable with the status. So let it go on way too long without asking. And then all of a sudden, you know, when something pops up that you haven't been working on and you feel really blindsided, that's how I felt. All of a sudden, oh, this project is now urgent and it's not done. And I haven't asked about it for a few months now, and I really should have. And I had my own ego was afraid to make the person feel bad, or was worried, oh, they have so much going on, give them some slack. But you know what? Setting expectations that are clear is way more kind than not asking about something for so long and then expecting something that you haven't really communicated. If you don't do this properly, your one-on-ones will feel awkward and your direct report will feel like they can't trust you, and you might not trust the person either, and you're gonna feel bad about yourself. So make the simple ask, even if it's uncomfortable. Hey, can you tell me the status of that project? If they say it hasn't moved, can you tell me what barriers you have? Is there anything what can I help you with? And it helps them really reflect and say, okay, what can I ask my leader to do to help me move this project forward? Easy peasy, follow up with it next time. And you can tell them, no shame in that, let me help you remove barriers, let's get this project going. It gives them an opportunity to talk about something maybe they're uncomfortable with too. Model what you expect. So if there are action items or takeaways from the meeting, my suggestion is that you write those down in your notes, and then at the end of your day, when you're maybe doing the daily reflection, seeing how things have gone, make sure those action items are built into your calendar somehow, or you know when you're gonna get those done. Sometimes if I have time right after the one-on-one, I'll do those one-on-one action items and I'll just get them done. If you don't get things done and they're action items that are on your plate for the meeting, then how can you expect your one-on-one, your direct report to also get their action items done? You need to walk the walk, talk the talk. So model the behavior you expect. That includes being on time for the one-on-one, being punctual, being mindful of the time, being prepared, and knowing what's going on. If you take notes using the notebook method, you'll have your one-on-one written down, the notes from previous one-on-one here, and you can do the current one here. That way you can look back and forth and kind of review the action items ahead of time in preparation for the next one-on-one, so you can model the behavior you expect. All right, and just wrapping up here, I think it's really important to encourage and recognize our folks because their work is important. They need to feel valued. They need to feel like you feel like they're doing a good job. So if you're always just asking, maybe just moving on, check, 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 okay, great, without making it light or recognizing or encouraging them, that can feel really harsh and it's not collaborative. I would suggest when we're listening more and we're talking less, instead, if someone has an idea or comes up with something or tells you about a project they're doing, instead of adding or elaborating on that, something simple just to encourage them, you could say, fantastic idea, or yes, I think that's good. And just encourage them for coming up with their own ideas. Something positive. Oh, I like it. Oh, that's a good idea. That's innovative. Or, okay. And give them that positive reinforcement without adding to it so that they continue to own that idea. And then lastly, I think it's really important, say thank you. I always try to say thank you at the end of the meeting and say, hey, thanks for making the time for me. I know you're busy, but I appreciate being informed. And I really love collaborating with you and talking with you about the work you're doing. I'm really proud of the work that you've been doing this year. And that makes the difference. People need to hear thank you and be recognized for their work immediately because, you know, oftentimes it can feel like we go too long without saying praiseful things. So I always try to say thank you. and appreciate you. As you're kind of forming, storming, norming this process, as you're kind of in process improving it, don't be afraid to ask your direct report and say, hey, what was most helpful for you during this meeting? And they might tell you, oh, well, I appreciated how you told me this advice, or I really like the format of the meeting. And I always, ask, hey, do you think 30 minutes is enough time? Are we good? Or, hey, we seem to fill up the 30 minutes and we almost always go over. Do you want to move it to 45? Or, hey, do we need to make these meetings more frequent instead of, every other week? Do you want to go back to weekly just during this time, and we can always change it up later? So ask for continuous feedback. Okay guys, thanks so much. If you want to learn more about one-on-ones, you can go in the description of this video, click on the link. I have a blog post on there. I have templates about the structure, the cadence of a meeting, including questions to ask and tips for encouragement and modeling the behavior you expect. All right, until next time, go forth and lead. All right, thanks guys.